1923 Season 2 can finally solve Yellowstone's Thomas Rainwater mystery. 1923 Season 2 can solve an unresolved mystery about Thomas Rainwater, Gil Birmingham. Thomas, John Dutton IE's, Kevin Costner rival, has been a vital part of Taylor Sheridan's neo-Western series since Yellowstone's series premiere, when Rainwater became the new chairman of Broken Rock. Just before he is introduced as the new chairman, Thomas Rainwater tells a visiting Montana senator that he thought he was Mexican until adulthood. Thomas gives the legislator the cliff notes on his life as he is adorned in traditional regalia, and an assistant cleanses him with smoke. In Yellowstone's series premiere, Thomas Rainwater reveals that he was adopted, learning about his American Indian heritage when his adoption records were unsealed. Despite Thomas remaining pivotal to the series throughout, the scene in Yellowstone Season 1 provides the most insight into Rainwater's origins in the Yellowstone universe. We know Thomas earned an Ivy League college education to help his people. However, Yellowstone never revealed Thomas' connection to the tribe, which motivated his work, despite the chairman's significant role in Yellowstone Season 5's finale. That said, 1923 Season 2 could clarify the details. Considering they share a last name, Tana Rainwater, Amina Neves, from the cast of 1923 could be the missing link to Thomas Rainwater, explaining his connection to the Broken Rock tribe. The most convincing connection between Tana and Thomas is their last name, Rainwater, which could connect the relatives despite Thomas being adopted. Nothing concrete connects the characters except their potential surnames, but details from Thomas and Tiana's stories are aligned to cross in the future. In the Yellowstone series premiere, Thomas Rainwater tells the visiting senator that he wasn't raised on the reservation in Montana and thought he was Mexican. Thomas' adoptive parents convincing him that he was Mexican, despite Rainwater noting that he always felt otherwise, could just be a display of trust between parent and child. On the other hand, it could have been easy for Thomas' parents to lie to him about his heritage because Thomas was raised in the American Southwest. Meanwhile, in 1923 Season 2, Episode 1, Tiana heads to Comanche territory with her father, runs his horse, Michael Spears, and Pete Plenty Clouds, Jeremy Ghana, which comprises parts of New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma around the turn of the century. Despite her story picking up at the U.S. School for Native Americans in North Dakota, Tiana Rainwater is from the Crow tribe in Montana. We know that Tiana is connected to the Crow people because her grandmother comes to the superintendent of her school to request that her granddaughter be moved to a day school close to the reservation in 1923 Season 1. Episode 2, Nature's Empty Throne. The superintendent refers Tiana's grandmother, Isakshi Rainwater, Amelia Rico, to the magistrate at the Crow Agency. Referring Isakshi back to the Crow Agency suggests that's where she and Tiana are from. Isakshi explains that Tiana lived with her before they took her. The grandmother explains that Tiana's father manages the reservation's herd, and that her mother died of Spanish flu. The superintendent recommends that Isakshi adopt Tiana to complete her request adequately, not understanding the nature of Tiana's multi-generational household. Isakshi is murdered in her home in 1923 Season 1, Episode 6, One Ocean Closer to Destiny. Eventually, Tiana reunites with her father, who is on a mission to disappear with his daughter after she murders the Catholic nuns from her boarding school who raped and assaulted her. With Tiana's story, 1923 Season 2 can contextualize Thomas Rainwater's origins within the Yellowstone universe, possibly connecting it to Tiana's future. Considering Thomas and Tiana share a last name, it's likely that Tiana is somehow related to Thomas. Tiana's journey to Comanche territory is further evidence that Anna Neva's 1923 character could somehow be associated with Thomas, especially since her journey causes her to go into hiding. It could be that Tiana, Pete, and Runs his horse all make it to the southwest, and after settling down among the Comanche people, Tiana Rainwater starts a family. While too old to be his mother, Tiana could be Thomas Rainwater's grandmother. It could be that Tiana had to hide the identity of her child after disappearing in 1923, and that her descendants, therefore, had to do the same. That could be why Thomas' mother gave him up for adoption. On the other hand, Thomas' mother could have simply endured harrowing circumstances that barred her from properly raising her child. Regardless, it is plausible that Thomas emerged from the American Southwest as a lost descendant of Tina Rainwater, and 1923 Season 2 can settle the details. Ever since Thomas Rainwater was introduced in Yellowstone, fans have speculated about his past and the origins of his leadership within the Broken Rock Reservation. His compelling storyline, marked by a relentless fight for indigenous land rights against the Dutton family, has raised questions about his ancestry, his mentors, and the journey that led him to power. While Yellowstone has provided some insights into Rainwater's background, it has yet to offer a definitive origin story. However, 1923 Season 2 is poised to finally solve this lingering mystery. The missing link between 1923 and Yellowstone. One of the greatest strengths of Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone universe is its generational storytelling. 1883 laid the foundation for the Dutton family's legacy, while 1923 has expanded upon their struggles, introducing new conflicts and allies. With the Duttons fighting to preserve their land amid economic turmoil and rising tensions with indigenous communities, there's a perfect narrative opportunity to introduce a key figure from the Rainwater lineage. In Yellowstone, Thomas Rainwater reveals that he was adopted by a white family and grew up disconnected from his native heritage. His journey to reclaim his identity and fight for his people is a central part of his character arc. This raises an important question. Who were his ancestors, and how did their struggles shape the man he would become? 1923 Season 2 can provide crucial pieces to this puzzle by introducing a direct ancestor of Rainwater who was instrumental in shaping Broken Rock's resistance against land-hungry settlers. Introducing a Rainwater ancestor in 1923. One plausible way for 1923 to solve the Rainwater mystery is by introducing a strong indigenous leader who embodies the spirit of Thomas Rainwater. This character, perhaps a grandfather or great-grandfather, could be a tribal leader or warrior resisting the encroachment of the Duttons and other settlers. If 1923 showcases the struggle of Native Americans during this time, it would be a natural place to explore the lineage of a future leader like Rainwater. A possible character could be an indigenous negotiator, someone who balances diplomacy and resistance in a world that is rapidly changing. Maybe he's a warrior seeking justice, fighting against the policies that have stripped his people of their land. Or he could be an ally to the Duttons, forming an uneasy truce to fight a greater enemy, such as corporate land developers, railroad tycoons, or even the early government forces enforcing assimilation. The role of Tina Rainwater. Another potential connection between 1923 and Yellowstone is Tina Rainwater, whose harrowing storyline in 1923 Season 1 depicted the atrocities faced by indigenous women in boarding schools. It's possible that Tiana, or one of her descendants, could be directly tied to Thomas Rainwater's ancestry. If Tiana survives the brutal oppression of the Catholic boarding school system, she could go on to become a key figure in Native resistance, laying the foundation for the leadership that Thomas Rainwater eventually inherits. If 1923 Season 2 explores Tiana's survival and journey back to her people, it could also establish connections between her descendants and the Broken Rock Reservation. Perhaps Tiana's children or grandchildren become leaders, shaping the path that eventually leads to Rainwater's emergence as a powerful force in the 21st century. A paradoxical relationship with the Duttons. Yellowstone has portrayed Thomas Rainwater as both a rival and reluctant ally of John Dutton. This nuanced relationship could have historical roots that 1923 Season 2 can explore. If a Rainwater ancestor had interactions with Jacob and Cara Dutton, it could set the stage for the complex, cyclical nature of the Dutton-Rainwater dynamic. Maybe there was a temporary alliance between the two groups against a common enemy, or perhaps there was a betrayal that fueled long-standing resentment. This could explain why, in Yellowstone, Rainwater has a measured yet firm stance against the Duttons. He is fighting a battle that his ancestors lost a century ago. Furthermore, 1923 could explore the legal battles that indigenous communities faced during this period. Perhaps a Rainwater ancestor was involved in land disputes, mirroring the modern-day fight that Thomas Rainwater continues. This would add even more depth to his character, showing that his struggle is part of a much larger generational conflict that has been unfolding for over a century.